Hi everybody, this is Dana Childers from the Integrated Training Collaborative. I work with the Partnership for People with Disabilities at Virginia Commonwealth University. And it's funny, I'm sorry, I'm out of breath a little bit. We're having a great big storm here in Chesapeake, or getting ready to. So I was just taking care of some things before the storm hits. We are delighted today to be talking to you about how to engage families during visits. Excuse me. This is a topic that's really important to our field and really important to me, because I love thinking about what is it that we can do during visits that can make a big difference on helping families know what to do between visits. So for our topic today, we're really delighted to have Kim Travers join us from Ohio to talk to us about her experience, kind of from both sides, from the experience as an early interventionist, but also her experience receiving early intervention for her children. Excuse me. We also have joining us on the line Jeannie Schroeder. Jeannie is our technical specialist and the whiz behind these webinars to making sure everything goes smoothly. So Jeannie's on the line, and we're always really grateful to have her there too. I wanted to let you know that you are more than welcome to use the chat feature in your lower left-hand corner to write questions to Kim, to write if you have chat comments as we're going along. Excuse me. We are very happy to have you do that, and we'll try to snatch up those questions and comments as we go along and answer them throughout the webinar. Now, since we're talking about families today, you might have things that pop into your head that you think about a particular family you're working with. We just encourage you to respect family confidentiality and with anything you type into the chat, so that would be wonderful. So I think I'm going to get ready to turn everything over to Kim. Kim will introduce herself and take it away. Thanks, Kim.
Great, thanks, Dana. And I just want to thank you and the collaborative and all of the people who've kind of supported and invited me to come. I think it's really a great opportunity to kind of share a family perspective, and I appreciate you making sure that voice is at the learning table. I think it's really critical. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to me and who I am. Really, my focus and dedication is enhancing the lives of family and their young children, really focusing on Part C early intervention policy and practice. I've been in the field of early intervention for over 20 years now. It's hard to believe it's been that long because it doesn't quite feel like it. I started as a service coordinator in Indiana in Part C, and also was an intervention specialist before I became a state consultant. So I really have kind of seen the practice side and the policy side and the professional development side, working quite a bit in the field. And then in 2000 I moved to Ohio where I became an early intervention manager. So I actually helped run teams for one of our largest counties in Ohio in the Cleveland area. And in 2003, gave birth to my first daughter prematurely, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And again in 2006. So my world kind of shifted from being a professional in the field to being a consumer of the services, being a parent. And then through that journey of being a parent, I became pretty involved a few years down the road with advisory councils. I actually sit on our state ICC and have for the last 8 years. My position there is ending, but I chaired the ICC. I worked in lots of DEC committees, lots of different groups to really look at how we support both professional development and family development and those voices at the table. So that's just a little bit about me and my experience. So as Dana said, I kind of can see all views and understand all perspectives around the table. But I want to get to know who's here today. So Dana had talked a little bit about polling, and if you look at your participant box going across, there is a lowercase a. If you select that A, and tell me what your role is and who's here today. I'll give you a few seconds to go ahead and select that. Okay, Jeannie, do you want to post those results for me? So it looks like we have a pretty good mix. We have some service coordinators, we have service providers, administrators, we have some others. I know that we do have some groups together on the line. So I do see in the chat, thank you for noting that, we have occupational therapists, soon to be OT students. So it's really awesome to see that we have a variety of people, a team as you would, of professionals kind of working together. That's great to see. So what I'd like to take a look at is our agenda. And I really kind of picked out some kind of critical areas I'd like to talk with you about. So the first one is I want to provide to you a family's perspective on what provider actions during visits really made a significant difference for my family. And then the other big agenda item that I would like to talk to you today, and kind of through stories and examples and discussion, is provide strategies that are going to help you identify family gifts and contributions, how to build upon family strengths, and how to support caregiver decision making. Those are kind of the real big key ideas that I'd like to talk about today. But one of the things that I want to make sure is there a hot topic or an agenda item around engaging families that you all want to make sure is addressed today? So if you can think about that a minute. The things that I've had as an agenda, are there additional items that you want to make sure we talk about today? If you have that, can you go ahead and note that in the chat? Give you a moment to think about that. Any other items around family engagement? So Deanna writes strategies for getting started and working with families, off to a positive start. We have engaging fathers. Someone writes when parents don't participate or view time there as an opportunity to do something else. So kind of they're looking for, your job is to work with my child and I need to do other things. Someone writes, make sure parents are aware of how to navigate the early intervention special education system. Okay. All right. So we see we have a few additional agenda items. If I do not cover those in my discussion today, with some of those I do think I will, we will get those at the end. So Dana, if you and Jeannie help me keep track of those, that would be great. But the reason that I actually asked for your agenda was I was modeling coaching in action here. I may have a plan for what I want to teach you, but I need to understand what your expectations and goals are for our interaction. If I don't understand your wants and needs, I won't be able to support your learning in a meaningful way. The same is true for each of our home visits we have with families. Reflect for a moment on an experience that you had while interacting with someone else, and you both had the same vision for what's going to happen. Think about that inside. What did that feel like? But on the flip side, think about when your agendas are different, and what did that home visit or what did that engagement with someone else feel like? Sometimes it's a rub and it doesn't feel very comfortable. So I think it's important when we think about beginning our work with families, do we have an established agenda that we're going to work on together? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. So on the screen you see my husband Todd, my daughter Elena, and my youngest daughter Kirsten. They're now 12 and 8. But before I begin, I just want to say that I appreciate all of the professionals who've worked with my family. I truly believe they were supporting us in the best way we all knew how at the time. I know that they would support us in any way possible, and if I share an example of something that could have been better, it wasn't because of their lack of effort. Looking in the rearview mirror, we learn a lot about what we could have done better or differently. I think that's really a critical, important reflection to make. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey into parenthood. So my husband Todd and I were overjoyed after 9 years of marriage to discover that I was pregnant with our daughter Elena. Also to our surprise, she came into the world at 32 weeks, weighing 2 pounds, 8 ounces due to my HELP syndrome. So imagine me here having 10 years of experience in early intervention at that point and having a preemie. It was really scary. We stayed in NICU for 28 days, and Elena came home tiny but tough. She did very, very well and continues to grow and thrive. But 3.5 years later, I had a repeat delivery with Kirsten at 33 weeks, weighing a whopping 3 pounds, 7 ounces. She seems so much bigger than Elena. However, her NICU stay was 1,000 times more complex and challenging. We were basically told Kirsten's life was in God's hands for the first few days. The amazing thing for our family was that we had the same NICU team, so there was a relationship and trust that was established that made experiencing something so terrifying not too difficult. We felt so supported by all the staff. We received early intervention services for both of my daughters, so I had the opportunity to experience the system over time and for daughters with very different needs. I'm really going to focus our discussion today around my youngest daughter, Kirsten. Kirsten had a difficult first few days of life in the NICU. She had respiratory distress, was intubated, developed a right side pneumothorax, and struggled in NICU. She was a queen archer, the queen of archers, had reflux, sensory integration difficulties, and delayed milestones. So I think it's pretty fair to say she was a little cranky in those beginning months. And actually, I think I was too. Kirsten was up 2 to 3 times a night for the first 18 months of her life. She didn't sleep through the night until she was almost 3. I was incredibly sleep deprived. A big challenge for me was having 2 daughters, 3.5 years apart, who had extremely different needs. Elena enjoyed quiet activities and had difficulty processing visual or auditory input. She didn't like noise at all and was quite content staying in her room. Actually, she still does, but that's because she's a tween now. Kirsten was on the move constantly and cried a lot. It was a challenge to balance both of the girls' needs and be a family with good sibling relationships. Kirsten had so many medical issues and sensory challenges that her care required constant action. Sibling relationships is a priority for me, but Elena just kept asking me, please take Kirsten back. She was just really loud and it didn't mesh with Elena. It got better. There are real moments of joy, and the family time that occurred became more frequent over time. The girls are now 12 and 8 and teaching me that together we can accomplish many things. Though our course never goes as planned, we always keep our eye on the destination. And so it's been a really great journey and I've learned a lot. So what I'd like to do today is really kind of share my experiences and hopefully help others learn. So really thinking about what I've talked about, some of those ideas and possible strategies to engage families in meaningful ways with the intent of improving the family quality of life. So when I use the term assessment, I want you to think about what one word popped in your brain as soon as I say assessment. But what we're going to do is I'm actually going to do a little poll. So on your text bar, vertically, the 4th box down, choose the uppercase A. So when you hover on that, you'll see an A. If you click on your mouse on the clipboard, you will place an insert point. And then share with us that one word that comes to mind when you hear the word assessment. And press enter when you're done so your word will pop up. So go ahead and give that a try. What comes to mind when you heard the word assessment? Great. So I see lots of different words. You guys can keep popping those up. I'm just going to kind of read through a few of them. So information is on there, and I see also someone typed in information in the chat box. That's totally fine if you had trouble getting a little text box to work. Eligibility, someone wrote a question mark. Testing, understanding, child development, stacking blocks, skills, a picture or a full picture. So those are some of the things that kind of came to mind. Now, what I'd like to do is get us really thinking about assessment bigger and broader, kind of beyond child, into backing the lens up. Let's talk a little bit about ACIDIA, which ACIDIA is the root of assessment, meaning to sit beside. When we think about authentic assessment and services, are we sitting beside the family, both learning and teaching? Are we taking time to see and hear about the functionality of the child within the context of the family and the family within the context of their community? Are we talking at families and completing the paperwork and the process in a timely way? Believe me, I totally appreciate the 45 days, all the timelines, all the things we need to be doing. meeting those mandates, but not always building family competence in the process. It's very critical to talk with families and help them build the skills necessary for teaming. How do we work together to build a plan that addresses the family and child needs? Please realize that many families will need these skills long after they leave Part C. I've had over 25 plan meetings for my daughters. We've been through over 15 different evaluations and assessments, Part C eligibility, Part B eligibility, diagnostics. But remember, my daughters are only 12 and 8, and only Kirsten is receiving specialized services today. So that being said, we've been through a lot of planning, and I continue to challenge myself at getting better with teaming. What happens when individuals on the team have different ideas? And how do I as a parent participate in a meaningful way? As I reflect back on some of the best plans, whether it be IFSP or IEP, they always look at my child's functioning. I know we need to think about skill. However, when we get that skill context as a parent, I can see why the skill is important. Kirsten had some difficulties with balancing, walking, climbing stairs. If you look at that picture, she was the Queen W sitting, really had trouble organizing herself in space. We have a 2-story house with a basement. Her room's on the 2nd floor, and the playroom is in the basement. We spent a lot of time on stairs. Remember, I mentioned earlier, Kirsten is the queen archer and has motor planning problems, so it was difficult to carry her. Imagine going up and down the stairs. Believe me, I've fallen a couple times going up and down the stairs with her. One of our goals was for Kirsten to increase her ability to get around the house safely so that she could be more independent with play. This included strategies for stairs, getting around the room for desired toys and activities. And as a parent, I may not know what are the specific skills that are necessary to get to climbing stairs, walking, or movement, but I can tell you how the inability to move around affects not only my daughter, but also our family. If the team didn't have the skills to truly sit beside me so that we could combine our knowledge, our plan wouldn't have been individualized to our family priorities. So I really ask everyone to kind of consider, as you're working with families, are we really sitting beside in our assessment process? So one of the things I really think about is assessment according to rule is a requirement for programmatic planning and should be an ongoing process. But how do we assist the family with identifying strengths, gifts, priorities, supports, and resources? How do we ensure that the child and family assessment is an ongoing process that occurs over time and is authentic, kind of matches the current situation? Families change really quickly, and so do children, and so we need to be up to date and current. But how do we examine the bigger picture of family life and how that influences child outcomes? I have a picture up here of Kirsten holding a camera, and it's really visual for me to think about how we back the lens up and look bigger. How are we using any tools to help us identify what exists, what's already there, and what the family would like to have strengthened or missing? I might look at a family and see something and think, boy, that really needs to be better. But for the family, that is just so awesome that they got to that level. And so how are we really thinking about strengths-based? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on child assessment. I really want to spend some time on family assessment. So how we support families and understand that family support and services will ebb and flow over time is really critical, keeping us up to date. Things happen and families may forget to tell us or don't realize that change or new information is important for us. If basic family needs aren't met, the family may have a different priority than the one that's listed on the IFSP, depending on your authentic assessment. I put this resource up here. Some of you already may have it. If you don't, I really think it's a great book. Chapter 1 really goes deep into family assessments. And Leanne Young writes a really great article that helps us think about family assessment in a different way. Some of you are maybe using this, but I want to really go deep into it. So what areas might family support or assessment cover? So Leanne Young covers 3 major areas: informational, emotional, and financial. And these supports may be informal as well as formal. And I think it's really important for us to think about long-term supports for families. How do they continue to get supports and resources beyond their involvement in early intervention? So if we create all the resources as a system resource, it's really tough for families. We kind of lose the supports when we move to the next system. But what I'm going to do is I want to share a few stories, and I'd like for you to really think about the content areas here. When I'm sharing the story, is it an informational support or some assessment information, emotional support, or financial support? So really thinking about what are the content areas that you could identify just by me sharing a little story. So here's a little bit of my story. So one of the things that I definitely experience every day is frustration with medical bills. To me, they are so frustrating and have a huge impact on my family. I try to keep everything balanced, but what do you do when you have to decide on which bill to pay or who to call to negotiate payments? I am the queen of I can pay that in 6 months if I can pay each month. I can't tell you how frustrating and incompetent these bills make me feel. I had a choice to stay home and take care of my daughters. I'm not sure it was totally a choice, but one I made with the best intent. However, the consequences were increased bills and decreased income. I thought that I had the know-how, but when things didn't work out, I felt a lack of competence that ultimately impacted my confidence. So remember, I too was a service coordinator and thought that I knew exactly how to handle insurance companies, as I had supported many families through their finances. I know how to negotiate and coordinate payments, but regardless of all of that work and know-how, a lot of payments were still due and frustration still really existed. But also, by leaving the work environment, I became disconnected from adult contact and relationships. I don't know if you're aware, but having a preemie has some unexpected consequences, such as RSV season lasting from November until March, where the medical team strongly advised to limit outside exposure, especially anywhere there are groups. This translated into me being at home a lot with the girls. And yes, I went through this twice. Kirsten was harder because she was born in August, so that meant that the entire 6 months on high alert. And she already had respiratory distress at birth, and so we were very cautious as one bout of RSV could have been deadly to her. The result was unintentional loss of personal relationships as I was unable to continue to engage with my friends in the same way. I loved to mountain bike, hike, watch plays, participate in book clubs, all kinds of fun adult things. But now I was at home with an ill child and unable to participate in a lot of activities I really enjoyed. Both financial and need for care impacted my life in every way possible. I stopped doing the things I love to do that gave me personal enjoyment. I honestly think that many people just didn't know what to do or say, and my energy level to invite others to the house was pretty limited. And over the course of time, unable to have this consistent, concerted effort, friendships faded. The focus in our house was really on helping the girls engage in their world and live a happy, joyful life. I had experience working with children who had disabilities. However, I never supported a family with a child quite like Kirsten. Her sensory system, asthma, reflux, and numerous other illnesses were things I wasn't really knowledgeable about. Sensory and attention challenges were ever present, and a great OT had given me lots of information on proprioceptive and vestibular activities, or heavy work that was very important for my children in order to better organize their bodies. We had lots of exercise sheets and tools like how does your engine run, fidget boxes, you name it. I probably had it in my home. The occupational therapist recommended that I complete 20 minutes of heavy work every 2 hours, and I did attempt to pull those worksheets out. I even made a binder with everything in it. So take a moment and think about the story that I just shared with you. Those are some real family-level challenges. So what do you think might have been on my mind when the early intervention team came to visit? When the team walked through the door and asked how everything was going, I always said, fine. But was it really fine? I honestly think, looking back, that I probably would have lost it if I had let it all out. But gee, maybe that would have been what I really needed to find some alternatives, including ways to get a break, deal with the medical expenses, and connect to my community again. So did you see when I kind of talked about the content areas? I'm just going to back up a second. So when I talked about the need for information, emotional or financial supports in that family assessment picture, did you see those in my story? Go ahead and take a moment to think about that and type in the chat. Do you see someone wrote, lots of other things than just your daughter's developmental skills were happening? Someone writes, I had informational needs and financial needs. Absolutely. And the need to reconnect with others. I think that's a really important point, that kind of emotional connection and personal relief for myself as an adult. Really important. Pamela writes, my level of stress interfering with my ability to provide for my daughters. It still is a critical balance of how do I keep my stress level down. It's really important. I see someone wrote, high levels of emotional stress as a strength, great base of knowledge and informational experience. So I like that you pointed out I have strengths, kind of my knowledge base and information and experience is a real power, and a level of stress could be a real challenge. So imagine some families who maybe be going through this challenging situation without having the background that I have, knowing that I could call the insurance company and ask for a case coordinator, knowing that I could call the hospital and say, I know my bill is $5,000. I cannot afford to pay that. Can I have a one-year payment plan? Knowing that I can do that instead of saying, okay, what do I have to sell here or what has to give? Those are really important things. I see Deanna wrote, I've had multiple surgeries and the madness of managing all of financial paperwork was such a challenge. So sorry, Dana, I didn't mean to give you a flashback, but I think it's really important. And Dana said that she wishes that she had, or Deanna said she wishes she had known someone like me to help her navigate. But to really understand there are tools and resources to help you navigate finances is really important. We had to make some really tough financial decisions as a family. We even sold a vehicle. And bought one that was inexpensive. We don't have cable or satellite in our home because we have monstrous medical bills. So it changes everything in your life. Your quality of living or your standard of living can greatly be impacted when you have a child with a disability. But one question that no one asked me was really important is, what do you want to do? Or what did you do before but now you don't? That lens, I talked about that lens was so focused on Kirsten and everything that was happening for her that the outside circle really got wobbly and crazy and a lot of stress happened out there. If I would have been able to back the lens up and someone would have asked me, what do you want to do? What do you love to do or what did you used to do that you're not doing now? Would have made a really big difference in my life. So how we move that back to look at the family level in regards to how having a child with a disability impacts the entire family. I even talked about Elena a little bit and how that really impacted her as well. So I know as a parent, I always focus on my kids. That's my responsibility as a parent. However, as I grow, I discovered that if I don't take care of myself, my ability to really be present for the children is impacted. I have to lower my frustration levels so that I don't unintentionally turn that frustration towards my child. So I see a question that says, is this question you all ask parents now? This is what Dana asked. So has anyone ever asked a parent this question before? Someone said yes, that's awesome. I think it's a question, and you can reword it, you can look at it for a family. And I see someone else with our teams do ask that question. I think it's really important to back that lens up and take a look, and I love seeing that you guys are asking that question. It's really great. Okay, so I really want to talk about why the where matters, and I give you a little visual. I picked this particular scenario, and there were a few others, but this was one that never got resolved and was kind of a big family personal challenge, so I really want to take you on a little journey. So when Kirsten was a year old, we started to journey out grocery shopping together. I used to go in the middle of the night or at little times when my husband could be home. I just wanted to take my daughters and go to the store and get the job done so that the evenings we could have a little family time. I felt like my husband and I were always playing caregiver rather than slowing down to enjoy some family time. Kirsten would arch so bad that I couldn't set her in the shopping cart. She was too big for an infant car seat, and I was afraid to place her in one of those like front carriers. She would arch so bad. If I had her forward facing, she would arch back and hit me either in the chin or the chest. If I had her the other way, she was like putting her knees. It was just a really crazy thing. I tried everything. I had Elena too, so I was trying to figure out how to get a 4-year-old and an infant through the store. I tried everything to make the cart more comfortable for Kirsten to sit in. I rolled towels. I did a toddler cart cover, blankets, you name it. I tried it. I even asked our physical therapist to help us with the issue because it really was a priority for me. I understood the importance of keeping Kirsten in a forward rounded position versus allowing her to arch back. The PT made suggestions of adding the boppy pillow for me to try to the cart. I did it and it was too big. It pushed her too far forward. And the physical therapist didn't see the shape or the size of the cart. Therefore, we were kind of making a best guess. So one of the things I want you to think about kind of in that scenario and kind of what we did, what could have been different? Or what could we have done differently in that situation? You guys have any thoughts on why the where matters and in this situation, what we could have tried differently? I'm going to type that in the chat. Someone says to have the physical therapist go to the store. Problem on the spot within the routine. Problem solve on the spot within that routine. So I think you guys brought up some really good points. Dana had said, ask what you already tried, problem solve within the routine, or have that physical therapist go to the store. Another thing that I thought of later that we didn't mention was take a picture. Like I could take a picture of the cart and say I was trying these things, because maybe if she visually saw what I was trying to do, then maybe she could look at it and give me some suggestions based on what I did. Video is what Deanna wrote down. I think those are really, really great solutions. Trying to figure out in action how to make that work. And this really could apply to anything. I have to share this story because it's kind of funny, but it's not. Everyone said, oh, try a bumbo seat for Kirsten, and that will try to help her, maybe give her more control. So we got a bumbo seat. She actually arched out of the bumbo seat. The physical therapist was like, you're kidding me. I've never seen a kid do that. She could do it. So really kind of being in the moment, video, pictures. I always like to share pictures so that I can say, this is how I had the environment set up. Was that the right way to go? It's a really great way. I see Jeannie writes, my son did that too. We have joint archers. It does exist. It's a real challenge. Oh, real challenge. So I want to bring your attention to something that's been concerning to me as I work with families and professionals in the field. I'm finding and have experienced that at times professionals are focusing on either the how or the what for services. And Dunst, Trivet, and Robb in 2014 have a great article where they break apart implementation science, which is how we work with adults, how we transfer adult learning, and evidence-based intervention, the what. The what and the how. I have also found that depending on the professional in their learning journey, they may focus on one piece of this important puzzle and not the other. I really like the analogy of the Ferris wheel here, because the wheel can turn halfway with the what, we can get things started, but we don't know, if we don't know the how to transfer knowledge to the caregivers, the wheel won't be able to climb back up to the top. So it takes both to keep the wheel turning. I've seen professionals learning coaching as an adult interaction style and get stuck in something like reflective questioning and not going deeper into sharing evidence-based intervention strategies with the family. They truly were in the mindset that the family needed to find the strategies. And after talking with the provider, I asked, how will the family know what the options are? You just asked mom to order and she doesn't have the menu. It's important not just to tell the parent, just do this, but it is how we build the family's understanding of the strategy in a meaningful way so that it fits into their life naturally and builds upon what they're already doing. This gives parents an opportunity to reflect on how they are doing the strategy and how and when the strategy is working for the child as well as the family. So this is a really critical piece to make sure that we're thinking about both of those levels. And so for me, a big lesson learned is don't assume because you showed the family something one time that they'll be able to implement to fidelity. I personally have to do something myself before I understand all the pieces I need to do. I don't do as well as a learner when I only watch something being done. So I would encourage you to have conversations with the family about how they best learn. I really like the cycle of try, watch, and do. The watch for a caregiver is that you model with intent and give the caregiver a specific thing they need to be watching for as you model. Also, talk out loud about what you're thinking. We learn a lot from the analysis of the task when we talk it out. I really found a lot. I learned a lot from the occupational therapist talking out loud, the PT talking out loud. It taught me a lot and also helped me ask some questions. The next step of that cycle is the try. Have the family show what they know and then evaluate and provide feedback. A big area that I really needed to learn for my daughter is pacing and wait time. I thought that I was waiting forever when I made a request to Kirsten. I would make a request and nothing. She would say nothing, and I would wait a good 10 seconds. But then the therapist realized that the 10 seconds for my daughter was not enough, and that sometimes 30 seconds was needed. I don't know if you've all tried to sit quietly after you ask a request, but 30 seconds is a very long time. But without my demonstration and our reflection on how that worked, I would have assumed that the strategy was bad, when in fact it was the specific implementation of that strategy for my child that wasn't working. So I think it's really important to think about that. The next step in that cycle is do. We need to help parents identify all of the opportunities to practice, that exist within their day. As I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of information on intervention strategies, but I didn't always see when or how to do that naturally within our day. It became an extra thing we had to do and often disrupted the day for my children, rather than things that were fun or things that we needed to do in our day. You know, those simple routines like laundry, dishes. Those are great opportunities for that heavy work that I talked about earlier, really helping me practice some of the skills and strategies, help build strength that my kids really needed to have happen. What made the difference? This is a piece that I really want to kind of go through a few more stories and get you guys thinking about what really made the difference. So I'm going to read through an example, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, but I'm going to have you type it out in the chat. So here we go. So based upon this experience, I want you to think about two kind of questions, and we'll go over them again at the end of my little vignette, my little story. Is I want you to think about what worked well and what could have made it better. So here's kind of the first example. When Kirsten was little, she had low tone and really needed to strengthen her muscles so that she could manipulate toys, hold things, crawl, stand, and ultimately climb. Her entire body was impacted from the way she was able to grasp things like a crayon or a spoon, as well as her ability to move around the house. The team gave me lots of informational papers with great activities that I could do and did with Kirsten, from exercises that would strengthen her muscles all the way to adaptive spoons that would help her with self-feeding. We talked a lot about assistive technology to enhance her independence. So based upon this example, what do you think could have been better? Take a minute to think about what could have been better. All right. So there's some notes. Done the activities with you. Observe you do some of the heavy work activities with your daughter and then provide feedback. Have parent practice with feedback. Routines-based interventions, showing you ways to do the activities within your daily routines. And observe in the situations within your life. Those are really, really great examples. In this example, if we think about that what and how Ferris wheel I talked about it, they gave me lots of really great what, but what was missing was kind of that how to integrate in a really natural way. And it's kind of funny, I put that little OT Mom's core exercise for kids. I actually had a binder with all of these different Superman exercise and figure eights and all kinds of things that we needed to do. I talked about earlier where the OT had recommended every 20 minutes for 20 minutes every 2 hours. That's a lot in a day. But I had this little book. I would sit it out on my counter and I would kind of try to get in our routine these activities. And one day I opened the book and Kirsten was like, no mommy, no more white book. And I realized, wow, I really am making this an additional exercise. And I really need to step back and figure out how I can do these same things in a fun way. And so I actually put a picture of Kirsten at the bottom with her hands up like, no. They really did not like the book. And that was a lesson learned for me, that was doing the what without the how in a natural way. So real lessons learned. Sometimes families, and I found this to be true, and I am guilty of it as well. If someone says to me, this is going to make a difference in your child's life, you're going to do it. So if someone hands me a piece of paper and says, the evidence says this exercise is going to help your child's core strength, I'm going to do everything I can as a parent to make that happen, even if it ends up driving me crazy. So something to think about. Not the book, I see someone writes. It truly was, not the book, Mommy. And I have to laugh. The book is gone. I can't find it anywhere. I was going to get it out and take a picture. I think Elena recycled it. It's kind of funny. Lessons learned, right? Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next example. And this one really is about relationships. So based on this experience, I want you to think about, again, what worked well and what could have made the situation better. So relationships is something that has been a very important issue for me, not only for myself, but for my daughters. I'd take Kirsten to story time at the library. We'd go to the park. I'd participate in community play groups. And as Kirsten aged, her ability to have good social communication has been limited. She does not know how to engage in a way that others will reciprocate or sustain engagement. We signed her up for tap dancing, swim lessons, soccer, and other community activities with the goal of her building meaningful peer relationships. Even with our effort to get her out there and playing in our community, she has yet to build a relationship with peers that are outside of our family relationships. So like examples, daughters of good friends of the families, that's who she tends to play with. We invite friends over to play, but she's unable to focus on a play activity or follow others' leads or take turns. It's something that we still continue to struggle with. So kind of based on this example, what could have made this better? And what worked well? You guys want to think about that for a moment and note that in the chat. Dana writes, what worked well was we tried to get her involved with peers and lots of different opportunities. Staying up to date with interests of the child and family and continually reorganizing and assessing. In the moment intervention and modeling with peers. Interventionists could join in the planned activities to watch and coach. It's a great one. Trying to find what she's interested in, focusing on 1 or 2 activities was a suggestion. And we kind of did that. I know I have listed a lot of different things. We kind of did one thing at a time. So we tried soccer and realized that wasn't going to work. And finally we landed on tap. That's the one activity that is really a high interest of her. Deanna writes that what worked well was these are things that might have been of interest of the family or other peers. So kind of we chose the activities for her, and we did. We kind of tried it. Someone notes parent video interactions and presented interventions for developing strategies. Absolutely. make a focus play date where her existing network of kids she knows and enjoys and interact with, so building upon that activity. I think those are really great activities. In this example, if we go back and think about the Ferris wheel, I had the how, getting her out there and getting her within her routines and activities we thought were important as a family, but we didn't have the what. We didn't know how to facilitate her relationship and engagement with peers in a way that wasn't interfering with the play. It's kind of one of those fun challenges, is how do we help her build those strategies without always talking over a peer. So we're still kind of figuring that one out, how we help her develop it. It's getting better. I'll tell you one strategy that's worked really well is we have a very good friend who plays with her a lot, and as that child ages, we've been able to talk a little bit about how Kirsten interacts, and that sometimes if she plows in, she's not meaning that to be aggressive or take over, that she's still learning how to play. And so we've tried to kind of set the framework for her peer buddy to say Kirsten doesn't always understand that. Well, that peer has become a link to other peers and other friends, and it's kind of become the guide at the side to help Kirsten be able to play in a way, or to explain to the friend, oh, she didn't mean to knock that down with the cow, even though we're playing with dolls, and tries to figure out ways to build it in. So we really are trying to build that peer mentor, and it's taken some time, but it's a real fun challenge. Okay, so let's go over to the last example that I have. And of course I had to put the stairs in there because it was something that was a real challenge for us. But as I had discussed earlier, this was really a difficult issue and really impacted the functional life for us as a family. So when she began to learn to climb the stairs, we noticed that she'd only use her right leg to climb up and her left leg to climb down. So she was always right side dominant. Not a big issue for me as she was functionally climbing up and down the stairs. But one day the physical therapist said to me, Kim, I'd like for you to try and hold her right foot and encourage her to climb with her left foot. Let's get some more weight bearing on the left side. We also noticed that Kirsten wouldn't place her feet on tricycle pedals as she got older. So I tried to encourage Kirsten to alternate her feet while climbing or get her feet on the pedals, but when I noticed when I was holding her foot on the stair, she would scream and throw a fit. So I stopped because I was a little concerned about her safety. So at our next visit, the physical therapist asked me, so how's Kirsten doing with alternating feet up the stairs? And I explained that I really didn't care as long as she was climbing without difficulty. But the physical therapist said to me that it is somewhat important to help her alternate feet in the long-term connections with reading and writing, if there's some connections developmentally. So the physical therapist was trying to help me understand the importance of a skill on development that occurred in a later life. So based on that experience, can you guys tell me what you think worked really well in that situation? Go ahead and type that in the chat and think about what worked well. So Katie writes that she explained why the skill is important, and she gave me good information, but not strategies on how to help the issue of the alternating feet. Middle Peninsula and Northern Neck wrote, physical therapist explaining the rationale and the importance that worked well. Would have been better from the beginning though, and that was a really great point. If I would have understood right from the beginning why this was important, it might have changed my motivation to try it. Someone wrote that climbing stairs was a part of the family routine, so it was an important natural occurring activity, frequently up and down stairs. Great, I like those. So those were things that worked really, really well. What could have been better? What would have made this situation a little bit better? So Middle Peninsula and Northern Neck wrote, focusing more on my concerns as a parent and Kristen writes, having the physical therapist watch me try the strategy to help me troubleshoot. Dana writes, practice during the visit, observing you try the strategy out and problem solve in the moment. Or the PT model it for me. She did try, I didn't mention that, she did try to model it for me. Kirsten threw a fit, she tried again. It was kind of at the end of a session, and so we assumed Kirsten was a little fatigued, so we backed off. But that's a great example model. Any other ones? And I have to say the biggest one for me, what could have been made better, was actually not interfering with the stairs. Because that was such a pivotal, important routine within my life, getting her safely up and down the stairs, and I was more concerned about her stairs. We tried to, I have a hill in my backyard, so we tried to get her to alternate her feet by taking wider steps on the hill, trying different places other than our stairs. And Kristen writes, find a different strategy, one that does when one doesn't work, or a motivating factor for her to participate. Yeah, she was not motivated to alternate her feet going up those stairs. She wanted to get upstairs or downstairs to play. So it was kind of one of those things that it wasn't a motivator for her. She was able to do it, so it really impacted our ability to try that. So it was kind of one of those fun challenges. And it's amazing, the physical therapist was absolutely right. Like, she's so right side dominant even now, like in writing and reading. She wants to start on the right and work to the left. We have to work really hard to try to retrain her brain, get her to go across midline, start from the left to the right. The child is just very right side dominant. It's impacted her in every area of development. All right. So I want to kind of bring us all together, and really I want us to think about life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, which I know some of you are in the storm now. It's about learning to dance in the rain. And one of the things that I've really reflected on in the last year is Kirsten's really been struggling. We've actually seen some regression for her. And we're trying to figure out why. So if there's something we can do differently, we'll be doing that. But in that journey of trying to find out why, we've gone through a lot of diagnostics. A lot of labels I had never heard of. I did not know that we had dysgraphia and dyscalculia, and she has so many labels placed upon her. At meetings now, I almost want to say, what doesn't she have? We know she has ADHD. We know autism. We know all of these factors, anxiety disorder, all of these levels. But what I want to say is, how do I help continue to see that loving, joyful, happy little girl for who she is, and how do we help her be a part of our family and a part of our community, and how do we build upon her gifts and contributions as well as our gifts and contributions as a family. So one of the things that I always hope that we do as we enter a family's home and we talk about these really challenging things is we help families see the bright spots. We help them see the dream that's possible and not allow the diagnostic process or the assessment process, the evaluation process, to be one that focuses on deficits. That's kind of my take-home message. But life's not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning to dance in the rain. So one of the things, as you guys will get to know me, I never just like to tell a story and walk away. I want to think about what it means for you. So let me explain a little bit about these next 4 elements that I'm going to show you. These are what Dr. Petty-Franzak refers to as temperature checks, our self-assessment, if you would, where I'd like you to take a minute and jot down an answer for each one of these symbols. You can share it on the chat if you would like, or you can write it down for your own use. So the first one that I'm going to present to you is what squared for me. I want you to reflect on something that you knew, and our discussion built upon that or reinforced your current knowledge. So take a moment and think about that. What squared for you? Was something that you knew, and our discussion built upon that or reinforced your current knowledge? So see some people have shared, and thanks for doing that. So the importance of helping families understand why a strategy is important or could be useful, building on families' gifts, and getting to the what and the how. That's great. I'm going to move forward just for the sake of time. What was a highlight? So a highlight is really, what was the most important piece? What was the biggest piece for you in our discussion today? What was a highlight? So I see that the highlight was reflecting questions need to go deeper, and hearing real stories of life between visits, a good reminder, and orienting our work to the talents and gifts of all children and families. That's my favorite one. Remembering not to get stuck in reflective questionings and asking families to order without the menu. We do that a lot even though we might not realize it. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one just for time's sake. What is circling around? So this is, what is something that you're still thinking about or contemplating? Just kind of still circling around and you want to think a little more about it. And I'm going to go ahead and hop to the next one because I think this is probably for me one of the most important ones. What will I do next? So I always end with action planning and ask, what will I do next? I shared a lot of information. So now what will you do with that knowledge? So someone writes their do is continue to find ways to integrate strategies into routines and trying to find family priorities. That's great. And I know we talked a little bit about engaging dads, and I wanted to touch base on this here for a quick moment. When you're thinking about family priorities and thinking about who is sitting in front of you, find ways to ask and talk and dialogue about all of the caregivers in that child's life, whether it be moms, dads, maybe there's grandmothers, childcare. Think broadly about who is involved and what priorities or routines might be existing. I can say to you very clearly, for my husband and I, our children affect our routines in different ways. And so for me, I really struggle a little more in situations with Kirsten because I'm in her routine more frequently and she impacts my routine more frequently. And so for Todd, some things that might not be so frustrating because he doesn't have to get her up and get her ready for school in the morning. He is at work and that is my role, where his frustration might be getting her to sit at the dinner table. So that's one of my parting gifts is, are we only thinking about, again, that lens of the person who's sitting in front of us, or are we finding ways to back the lens up and use video, use blogging? How do we engage families, all caregivers, is a really critical piece. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Okay. I know we only have a few more minutes. I see that Jeannie put up, you can find all of our archived webinars at this website, but I wanted to take a moment. Are there other questions or things that you guys wanted to talk about that we didn't cover today? And Dana, were there any items that we didn't touch on based on our agenda setting from the beginning?
Hi, Kim. I don't. So I'll tell you, the storm here knocked my internet out for a little bit, so I am not able to go back and see the chat really far back. So Jeannie or Dina, if there's questions that we missed, if you guys don't mind typing them into chat, that would be helpful. But I don't think you missed anything, Kim, so I think we're good to go. If folks have any other questions they want to pop into the chat, now is a great time to do it. It's 1 o'clock, so we can hang around a minute or two, and you guys feel free to put some in. It looks like we do have a question from Kristen. Are there good question strategies to use to help families realize what's important in their daily routine?
That's a great question, Kristen. And one of the things that I always like to do is to just get families thinking about their day and what the routine looks like, or who is doing what during that routine, and then where they'd like that routine to be a little better. And that's kind of where that you can help them realize it. Also, as you've been working with families, they might say, oh, I get so frustrated when they can't blah, blah, blah. That is an opportunity to kind of recall, share with other team members, to say, hey, I heard you say this. And you could reflect back with the family. The last time we were together, or maybe in the moment, mom's like, oh my gosh, I get so frustrated, he won't ever pick up his toys, or whatever it might be. After playtime, we just need to transition. It's such a big frustration for me. If you could reflect back with that family, what I hear you saying is, and is that something you'd like to work on? And that way you can help pull out important parts of the routine. Or if they go to a skill level, I'm so frustrated he can't hold his spoon, or I'm frustrated he can't hold crayons, or he's crushing everything, then help them talk about, well, when in the day does that happen? Or there's certain times when that happens. And then really helping them build upon that to see when we can build the skill within routine. Does that help, Kristen?
That's a great strategy, Kim. I love the strategy too of if families say, oh, you know, bath time is so much fun and we love it. It's just like a great time every day. I could love your question about we could ask them, is that a time you'd like to work on communication, or whatever the big deal is. I mean, you can seize opportunities with the routines that go really well too. I loved how you said if you have a problematic routine, ask the family, is that something you want to work on? Because our red flags go up sometimes when we hear as providers about those routines, but taking the time to stop to ask, is it something you want to work on? I mean, it's a great way to get a picture of what's important to the family and if this is a priority or not. So it's a great one, Kim.
Right. I think that's really important.
I have here, Kim, is more specific examples, videos of this in practice, Middle Peninsula, and we certainly have calls all over Virginia for folks saying, please, we need video examples. There are two or three new videos out through the Family Guided Routines-Based Intervention work, and I'll try to pull up, actually for the folks in Middle Peninsula, links to those videos are on the Early Intervention Professional Development website under the Implementing Supports and Services page. So if you go, there's a couple of links to there's two videos that show some nice caregiver coaching strategies. So those are just a couple new videos that are out. They just came out in the last month or two. So if the folks in Middle Peninsula need a link to those videos, you guys can always email me. I'd be happy. I'll type my email in. I'm happy to provide those links. Let me put that in here now. I don't know if you know of any other videos too.
I'll have to look around. I don't know if Larry Edelman has any new ones out. I do, Kristen, like that you made a note that sometimes an activity is atypical because the parent has lived and dealt with it for so long. It's not atypical to them. And so that's where I think information sharing and build upon what they know about what could be typical is a really important piece to help them realize that it is atypical, or it is something that we could help support and build upon. So Kirsten does some things that she does them so frequently I don't even realize she does them anymore, and someone's like, oh, she's doing this, and it impacts her in the community, and so it's something we need to think about. I think that's great.
Yep. Question you see, yep. Pam has a question here, comments for best methods to help caretakers in the first couple of months.
Yeah, and that's a great question. It can be really complex, kind of depends on each family. I think in the beginning our best role is to help build a relationship with the family and help them understand how we set our agendas and what role you can help and support them with. So it's kind of setting the stage for how they can partner with you, how they are the expert of their child and you're going to bring the expert of strategies and things that we know that help children grow and develop. Because I think sometimes, especially in early intervention, there may be an expectation that like the medical model, we're going to sweep in as like doctors and we're going to make the fix. And so helping families understand they're the fix, they're the interventionist, and we're here to support them in that is really an important piece. The other thing that I can say with very young infants or children with severe issues is help them celebrate the small steps. And so not making a goal or a strategy too big, helping families keep that big picture, but then helping them break down the little steps it takes to get there is really a suggestion. If we can help them see the bright spots, that's a real great opportunity for us, I think. And Dana, do you have any other ones on that?
No, I think you said that really well. I love that because those little things can get lost in everyday life. So calling those out and celebrating